Oh, good afternoon. We're back. And we're here paying homage to the fan as we wait from the 2 o'clock hour on how quickly they will come back from lunch. They're always a little late, are they not? And whether or not that will open with a sidebar, I'm looking forward to how many more objections we're going to get for the afternoon, let alone sidebars, because we are really close to our 13 benchmark. And I do think if today is going to be the day that could get broke. But I have said that before because, the lunch, after the lunch stream, is usually only around 2 hours. It's a much longer stream in the morning, almost 4 hours, or just at 4 hours. Well, we shall see. We shall see. It was quite a morning, indeed. According to the socials, it's really divided down the middle again. The way things get interpreted back and forth. But I will say that I am heartened to see that some of the trial attorneys and some of the lawyers, the YouTube lawyers, are out there saying, it could go either way. It was good and bad in both, especially when it came to the testimony of Officer Kelly Davis. That could go, divas could go either way. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how you all. Well, it's going to definitely be up to the jury. There's a lot of other things going on in true crime today. P. Diddy is also doing testimony. Um, we had the witness, Mia, that was testifying under a pseudonym, you know, and she's been outed by a video she did on Instagram wishing him happy birthday. People have put two and two together, and now her name and our identity is everywhere. I really hate that. I do. Oh, she felt threatened enough, intimidated enough that she didn't want to use her name in trial. And here she is. It's all out there anyway. Thank you, Shill. Thank you for the coffee sticker. And thank you, Couch, for putting up the bingo links and pinning. Appreciate you. Appreciate you both. I'm curious, Couch, if you're there, how close you got to bingo this morning. Because I remember you saying in the chat all you needed was an animal. And of course, then they called Dr. Marie Russell, and this is going to be all about the dog. Yeah. Hi, Liam. You were productive during your break. Oh, one bingo and only 6 squares left on the card. That's interesting. It's a good one. I like those almost full card bingos. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. Well, one thing I forgot to mention this morning that I was going to mention like during one of the breaks, but it just skipped my mind again, is there'll be a little bit of a difference with the channel streaming. I've been multi-streaming to multiple platforms at the same time, and I've been doing that for quite some time now. And I'm going to change it up just a little bit starting this week, but not for all of the streams. Trial streams and hearing streams, live streams we're speaking on, live streaming, um, will continue to go on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter simultaneously. Because especially on Twitter, there is quite an audience for the back and forth, and I do a lot of uh, posting on that particular platform in regards to all the legal cases. So the trials, they get some interest there. However, my true crime and legal updates that are normally on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock at night for multiple cases, and then special editions that are done like P. Diddy, that I do on Fridays to update on the whole thing, along with all of my other content like Black Mirror in the 50th Law, in some of the library chats, and some of the more fun things I do, will be streamed to Kick instead of Twitter for those types of streams. So it'll be YouTube and Twitch and Kick. I've had a Kick membership for quite some time. I'm a Kick mod for um, our friend MC Wrecker, who has a Kick channel over there, and I just think it's an audience that would enjoy things like the 50th Law and Black Mirror, and even some of the special editions. And I have been branching out to do multi-platform, mostly because the terms of service law that is equal on is different on every different platform, and just not to keep all my eggs in one basket. As the channel grows and grows, I seem to think that there's more at loss here. As I develop more and more content, there's more to lose, and so. Yeah, I like this very much. Hey, welcome back, book lover. Hey, Couch, you ready for more of this? And he says, and the Couch says, nope, but let's do it anyway. Exactly. As far as this trial, I mean, we're going to have to get through this afternoon's testimony. But here's the thing. Or do we think that Robert Alessi is going to finish direct and let Hank Brennan have that cross before the end of the 2 hours today? That's the question. Welcome, Teresa. Good to see you. I hope you're well. Sounds like they're back. Welcome back, everyone coming into chat. Thanks for joining me.
All right, Mr. Alessi, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon and welcome back, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon.
Your Honor, if we could please publish Exhibit 1 in evidence.
Okay.
Mr. Wolk. Dr. Russell, do you recognize Exhibit 1 from your review of the documents in this case?
Yes.
And what is it that Exhibit 1 represents?
It's a picture of the forearm of the decedent.
And we left off at lunch, and I'm not going to cover too much old ground, just to reorient ourselves back to where we were. You were discussing the basis of your opinion and conclusion that you said that these wounds were caused by, why don't you restate? Well, let's continue on in the basis of your opinion. Let's just continue on. Can you go through what is in Exhibit 1 and describe how it is that you came to your opinion?
Well, I observed multiple patterns of striations or linear abrasions.
I'm sorry to interrupt you so soon. Do you have the pointer in case you want to use that available?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's multiple groupings of linear abrasions, and linear means like a line, linear. So there's multiple of those, and here's one. Here's another one closer to the elbow. Here's another one closer to the wrist, and here's another array of linear abrasions near the elbow.
In terms of these wounds, in assessing their source, do you look at them individually, collectively, or both?
Both. I look at them individually, and then I put them in context of how they relate to one another.
And how they relate to one another, is there a name of that methodology that you use in terms of how they relate to each other?
Well, I think it's a pattern methodology, pattern recognition.
And what pattern is it that you see here with regard to all of these wounds on the right arm?
Well, I see multiple linear groupings together in a area from the mid arm to the mid forearm.
Is there any analysis of direction that is involved in your analysis?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe that these wounds were initiated closer to the anterior surface or the front of the forearm.
I'm sorry, Dr. Russell, to interrupt you, but there's a fan back here which I can hear, but if you could just keep your voice up, that would be great for me.
Yes, I believe they all started closer to the anterior or front portion of the arm. Like they started up here, up here, and the direction is towards the posterior portion of the arm.
Now, if we could just go back briefly, I want you to do a comparison. If we could go back, Your Honor, please, back to Exhibit 157 that we had up earlier.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 167. As between 167 and 1, which one is closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located?
The previous one.
All right, so let's go back to the previous one. So that one is closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located on January 29 of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And so January 29, 2022, if we can go back to Exhibit 157, or 67, excuse me, 167, can you tell when this picture was taken from the depiction?
Well, it says January 31st.
Okay, so is that the basis for you saying that the Exhibit 1 was closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located?
Yes.
All right, so I want to do another comparison, have you do another comparison of the two. If you can look at what is depicted in Exhibit 167, and now go back to 1 and see if you see any differences at all as to what's depicted. Do you see any differences with regard to the wounds on the arm, or the arm just in general? Let's go back to see that now. Let's go back to 167.
Well, the coloration of the photograph is slightly different.
And what do you mean the coloration?
Well, the skin tones here are more yellow than they are in the previous photograph.
And I'm sorry. What is? Do you have a conclusion as to why there is a difference in skin tone in this exhibit compared to Exhibit 1?
Well, it could just be technique, lighting technique. I do see some lividity on the chest, postmortem lividity, and that's what that means is pooling of the blood, which happens after death.
Can you explain to the jury what lividity is?
Yes. So blood follows the laws of gravity, and the blood will settle to the dependent parts of the body. In this case, the body, the body of Mr. O'Keefe is horizontal, and so the blood is going to settle from the top of the chest, which would probably be up here somewhere, down towards the back, which would be the inferior portion of the chest in that position. And likewise, it would happen on the extremities too.
So you just mentioned the extremities. Do you see any lividity on the extremity here, the right arm?
You know, actually, there is discoloration over here in the elbow area. I do see some okay. So there's several areas of lividity on the arm. I'm sorry. There's some right here. This redness right here on the near the wrist. I believe that that's postmortem lividity. I believe that this redness in here near the elbow is also postmortem lividity. And yeah, that's what I believe.
Okay.
That's postmortem lividity.
And again, lividity is that you said something that sets in after time, after death?
Yes, it's the pooling of blood.
Is there, with regard to this depiction, do you see any bruising with regard to that elbow?
You know, I think that initially, earlier this morning, with the lighting, I may have said that this was bruising, but now as I think about it and I see all this other lividity here, lividity over here, I believe that's postmortem lividity.
And if we could go back to Exhibit 1, and you said this is the one that's closer in time to when Mr. O'Keefe was located, do you see any lividity or bruising with regard to that photo?
I don't see any definite bruising. I do see some discoloration up here near the shoulder. I'm not sure if that's postmortem lividity or not. It could be early postmortem lividity.
Okay. So if we could, thank you, Mr. Woe, can we take that depiction down for the moment? What I'd like to do is and we'll come back to that. If we could have the lights back on, please. Thank you. Have you had experience prior to this case in performing your pattern recognition methodology skills with regard to dog-inflicted wounds on humans? In other words, have you seen dog-inflicted wounds that have a pattern on humans?
I've seen dog wounds that have had a pattern. I didn't need to do it, utilize that skill because I also had other information about the case. You know, for instance, police officer or the victim himself said, you know, I was attacked by a dog.
Right. And for those that can you give an example, like in the ER, just as to how you would come to have that knowledge or otherwise? How would you generally come to have the knowledge as to a potential source of the wound?
Oftentimes it's the victim that tells me, or in the case of the law enforcement dog bites, I had both victim and police officers tell me that the police dog, inflicted these wounds.
And so and how many times generally in your career, we discussed it this morning, how many times generally did someone present with dog inflicted wounds and you were told that these wounds were from a dog? Roughly how many in your career?
Well, all of the law enforcement dog bites. So that would be 40 to 60 or so of those. Plus most of the non-law enforcement dog bites, the patients or the mother have said this, a dog bit me or a dog bit my son.
And for those where someone said something, the dog bit my son, were the wounds that you saw similar to or different from the wounds that are depicted in Exhibit 1 that we've had up on the screen?
On the civilian dog bites, there's some similarities, but not as many striations on the civilian dog bites.
And are the more striations on what's in depicted Exhibit 1, does that lead you to more easily conclude it's from a dog bite, or is it harder for you to conclude it's from a dog bite?
Neither.
So is your prior experience as an emergency room physician, as a physician in Cochrane, does that experience allow you to exercise pattern recognition skills with regard to Exhibit 1 in Exhibit 157?
Sustained.
Do you use your pattern recognition, did you use your pattern recognition skills in evaluating Exhibit 1 in Exhibit 157?
Yes.
In terms of characteristics of dog bites, if we can go back to Exhibit 1, please. Is Exhibit 1 highly characteristic of a dog bite or lowly characteristic of a dog bite?
Sustained.
How would you describe the characteristics of what appears on Exhibit 1?
What I see on Exhibit 1 is multiple strikes from a dog.
I'm going to allow it.
Can you please repeat your answer?
Yes.
What you see?
Multiple strikes from a dog.
And with regard to, do you see any characteristics in terms of a medical observation with regard to those strikes?
I don't understand the question.
Are you familiar with the medical term pathognomonic?
Oh, yes.
What is the definition of pathognomonic?
Pathognomonic in medicine means that the characteristics of a condition are so highly specific and unique that they basically say that it can only be from a certain condition and no other condition. So to the exclusion of all other conditions. That's what is meant by pathognomonic. At least that's my understanding.
Do you consider these wounds pathognomonic?
Yes. Sustained.
How do you evaluate these wounds in terms of what you call their characteristics?
I characterize them as highly specific for a dog attack.
I'm going to strike the last word, Mr. Alessi.
In terms of the characteristics that you have talked about, are there any other aspects of dog dentition that you can discern from Exhibit 1?
I don't understand the question.
You mentioned earlier when we had the dog dentition exhibit up, you mentioned an arch. Is there any aspect of Exhibit 1 that concerns an arch?
Yes, there is, in my opinion, an arch-like structure right here towards the lower part of the forearm, towards the wrist, suggesting that this here is made from the very front teeth of the dog. Now, when one looks at these injuries or wounds, one has to remember that, number one, this is not a mannequin. This is a person whose skin is somewhat elastic, whose skin will slide over the underlying bones, and so therefore some of the wounds may have been created by the exact same teeth, for instance, but look differently. depending on the part of the anatomy, the elasticity of the skin, also depending on things like if there was clothing or something in between the teeth and the skin. So one has to consider and also there may be motion motion effects. The living victim could have been pulling away from the dog. The dog could have been, pulling or jumping and only catching a glimpse, a little slight bit of the skin with his teeth. So there's a lot of movement and things that one has to consider when an injury is inflicted on a body.
I'm going to strike that.
Can we approach, Your Honor?
Sure.
Okay, sidebar number 9. Sidebar number 9, we are at 24 objections for the prosecution and still 8 for the defense. So here we go, sidebar. This is true, Mandy. If they are scratches from a dog, she actually said earlier on punctures, which does not appear in the medical examiner's report. And I don't know which ones she is claiming are the actual bites, but we'll see that later. I remember during the voir dire, there were some circles around a couple of them. There was, by testimony, absolutely not a single wound on that arm that could be measured for depth. If there was a puncture, it would have been measured for depth. So I don't know. This is interesting. They're not, yeah, not a single one of those arm wounds were measured for depth because there was no depth. That's what the testimony said from the Commonwealth expert. And just another thing to just bring up is that the Commonwealth did not present anything in regards to dog bite because they decided that their expert witness in regards to this, and they do have some lined up, will be rebuttal. If the defense had decided to carry forward with this testimony and challenging the wounds themselves. Good afternoon, Pete. Number 9 for our sidebars. We're doing an objection count today too, just because it's Monday. Hope you're having a good day. I hope you're all having a good day. It's not so bad for a Monday. And I feel a little more weak this afternoon. That fresh air certainly helped. I did, towards the late morning, get lulled a little bit there. Defense is, let me just put this one up. Okay. Defense is determined to get the wounds classified as dog bites. Prosecution should ask if tail light pieces are also indicated. Exactly, because was not the same shirt that's full of all the little holes and snags that she's talking about that could have been caused by the dog's teeth did have pieces of tail light. Okay, what do what's more probable? That's all I have to say. Is like that's what the jury's going to have to look at. Yes, there are possibilities, and it is the defense's job to put out some reasonable doubt, and that's what this is going to do. Well, probability of which one is more probable, I guess, percentage of probability with the additional evidence of taillights pieces, it's pretty hard to say that a dog did it. There is no evidence of a dog being anywhere near John O'Keefe. There's no DNA. There's no dog hairs. Nothing, and there's no tracks in the snow around him. Nope, nothing like that. So I don't know. For me, it's kind of easy to get rid of conspiracies when you do totality of evidence. There is nothing else except for her testimony that indicates what this is. And her testimony, to her credit and to her defense, is from her experience with this, which is a lot, and she's a well-qualified expert as far as medical goes. But she didn't touch the body or see the body. She's talking from a picture, and there is another medical expert who can't say whether they're from a car or whether they're from a dog. Well, didn't even bring up the dog. But said there's no definitive evidence that it was from being struck by a car, because there wasn't anything in them, because they have no depth. Number 9, Bear. Thanks, Pete. Yeah. I think that he probably will take up the whole time, Mandy. I think that would be his strategy, to continue all the way till 4 and not let Hank Brennan have a crack at the witness yet today. Doesn't want that in the defense, in the jury's mind overnight.
Mayor, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. If we could put the Exhibit 1 back up on the screen, please, Mr. Wolt. Dr. Russell, is what's depicted on the screen one dog bite or more than one dog bite?
Ask it differently, Mr. Russell.
Dr. Russell, can you determine from this depiction, how do you evaluate this depiction with regard to dog bites?
Well, I see several groupings of wounds. Here's one grouping up near the shoulder. Here's another distinct grouping near the elbow, but above the elbow. Here is a third grouping around the back of the elbow and the upper forearm. Here's some additional marks. I think they're separate, but I don't know exactly if they are separate dog bites or scratches. And then there's another grouping around the posterior forearm near the wrist. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 4 different types of either bites or combination bite and claw marks.
You mentioned claw marks. Is there any evidence of claw marks in this exhibit?
It's hard to say exactly what what these marks are. This one here, and even to a certain extent, this one here has some characteristics of both claw marks and bites. So
even though you may not be able to determine whether it's a claw mark, can you determine, or the specific type of mark, can you determine that those are from a dog?
I believe they are, yes.
So now let's go. You mentioned, we'll switch. We can leave that up for just a moment, because we're going to come right back to it. And Dr. Russell, earlier on, you used the phrase incomplete dental impression. Do you recall that?
Something like that, yes.
What phrase would you like to use? Because you were describing whether a dog or not had a complete bite. What phrase would you like to use?
That's okay. Incomplete bite. I
Okay. Do
might
you
consider.
see any evidence of an incomplete bite on Exhibit 1?
I believe all of the bites here are incomplete.
Why do you come to that conclusion?
Because in my opinion, they don't penetrate the skin, which I would consider more of a bite or more of a complete bite. So they're just scratches on the surface of the skin.
When you say they don't penetrate the skin, we see the marks that are on there. What do you mean that they don't penetrate the skin?
They don't penetrate the full thickness of the skin and extend into the soft tissue underneath.
And what, in terms of incompleteness that you just described, have you observed incomplete dog bites in your career?
Many.
Roughly how many incomplete dog bites have you observed and treated in your career?
Over 100.
In our incomplete bites, the majority of bites from civilian dogs, or are they a minority of the bites from civilian dogs?
I believe they're the majority of the bites of civilian dogs.
Did you determine whether these wounds occurred at the same time?
I believe they did.
Why do you come to the conclusion that they occurred at the same time?
Because of the wound characteristics, the coloration of the wounds, the tissue reaction to the wounds. So they all timing are at the same time, around the same time.
Did you determine whether these wounds were sustained by Mr. O'Keefe before or after he died?
Before he died.
How do you reach the conclusion that these wounds were suffered by Mr. O'Keefe before he died?
Because they have what we call a vital reaction. So there is an ever so slight vital reaction or inflammation around the edges of the wounds. And so that determines that, that supports the fact that they were inflicted during life.
Dr. Russell, did you observe Mr. O'Keefe's right arm personally?
No.
Is it generally accepted in the practice of medicine, particularly emergency or pathology, to observe and determine the source of a wound from a photograph after death?
It is generally accepted.
And have you, in your career, used photographs to determine wounds and patterns of wounds?
Yes.
And is that an accepted practice?
Yes.
And it is a generally accepted practice?
Yes.
Now, in conducting we're going to switch a little bit now to what you call the differential diagnosis. In conducting your differential diagnosis with regard to motor vehicle accidents, describe for the jury how you performed that differential diagnosis with regard to the decedent. And we can leave that up for just a moment. Go ahead, Dr. Russell.
So I'm going to need to see you. Sorry, folks.
I do believe I heard an objection before the sidebar. Did you guys? Because she didn't even, yeah. I'm going to count that as another objection, bringing it to 25. Bringing our sidebars to 10. Thank you, Couch. Oh, they are keeping us hot, man, today. We're getting closer and closer to that 13 mark. And it's only 2:40. This is it's going to be interesting. I do notice a little change in Alessi's style. And right now, he's addressing many of the points I know the Commonwealth will bring up immediately. It's like they're laying it all out there and opening up to the jury with answers from Dr. Russell first from the defense before the Commonwealth starts. Well, they're doing a pretty good job of looking at some of the weak areas of the testimony and actually making them stronger. He literally put into the testimony this time, addressing the fact that none of the wounds were deep enough or could be categorized as a complete bite because there was no puncture. There was accounting also for the lack of DNA. Incomplete bites, just scratches. I still think scratches would have left some type of DNA, these abrasions, but hey, they didn't test. The wounds weren't deep. They couldn't even get a depth measure on them. So there's that. So it does leave it for something for the jury to have to decide on credibility here. I mean, they're going to think that she's very qualified, obviously. Well, two things can be true at once. You can be very, very qualified and they still don't believe it's dog bite. But still, we'll see. It hasn't changed in the content of it. It's changed in the style and the emphasis of certain issues. That's what I'd say, Liam. It hasn't really changed. Oh, because you're going to call it a conspiracy, Liam, because she's changed it. Yes, she has built it around the Commonwealth issues in what they presented as far as the wounds. They may Rocket Couch. Rocket Couch says it's like a little too. It's a bit of too little, too late. If they've already decided on guilty, I doubt they have decided on guilty yet. And it only takes some reasonable doubt. It only takes one juror to start with the reasonable doubt, And I do think that even in the Commonwealth's case, there was plenty of area there brought up by the cross examinations of the defense team to put a little bit of reasonable doubt on a lot of things. So it's going to be a matter of weighing it out, I think. Yeah, he probably would, Liam. Yeah. It would be a whole different thing if this was a Commonwealth witness. But the judge is trying to keep them on track, keep these objections to a minimal in front of the jury. And so they keep sidebarring and discussing things, and well, and we're back again. We'll see how it goes. He did get her most important. Oh, they're not back. That was just that to show us that Alan Jackson and Karen Reed decided not to go to the sidebar. Anyway, curious. Yeah, there are, Teresa. It's a very loud crowd too. They don't want to hear it, like, you know. Okay, they're back.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
With Your Honor's permission to republish Exhibit 1. Thank you for your patience, Dr. Russell. Is what the wounds you see on Exhibit 1 consistent or inconsistent with what you have seen from your experience with regard to motor vehicle accident victims?
Inconsistent.
If I could have published Exhibit 206, which is in evidence, Your Honor.
Okay.
Do you recognize Exhibit 206?
Yes.
Did you review that as part of any report in this case?
Yes.
And can you describe how you reviewed this document as part of your evaluation of this case?
Well, I reviewed the injuries, which are so this is a decedent, a picture of a decedent, a different case, not the decedent in this case, totally separate case.
And
So
is this from Dr. Welcher's report that you reviewed?
Yes.
All right, so continue, please.
And so this is a person deceased, looks like in the street, and he's got multiple injuries. And this is allegedly from an auto versus pedestrian accident.
So if we could, are you able to discern any injuries to any limbs from this? If you could zoom in on the limbs, Mr. Wolf, thank you.
So there is a very extensive degloving, partially degloving, avulsion injury to the forearm of this individual, the extensive skin loss, damage to the subcutaneous tissue, possibly damage to other tissues beneath that.
And Mr. Wolk, if you could zoom back out and go to the list that is highlighted in the original of this. And Dr. Russell, can you tell me whether you evaluated the list, and if so, how did you evaluate that list in connection with the photo?
Well, the photo is limited only really to the upper chest and the right arm. And so I can't comment on any of the CAT scan findings here on this list, but this was a list of numerous traumatic injuries to this person. And regarding the arm, it says right upper extremity wound with vascular injury, clinical.
What does that mean, if anything, to you?
Well, that suggests it's a soft tissue wound. However, what they're saying is clinical, so they're not commenting on if there were any X-ray findings, for instance, on an X-ray, but I mean would be a post-mortem X-ray, and this is just a clinical diagnosis or a visual hands-on diagnosis.
Do you know whether that line that you just read relates to any part of the photograph? Any part of the photograph?
Well, I believe it relates to that injury that we pointed out in the previous photograph.
Can you switch back to that, please, Mr. Wolf? If you could just zoom in and just what does...
So this is the wound that they are talking about. It's a large gaping wound, soft tissue wound.
If we could go back to the list, please. Zoom in, thank you.
But
Please continue.
what I was going to say is that there are multiple other injuries in this person, multiple serious, significant injuries, subdural hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, intraventricular hemorrhage, liver laceration, pneumothorax. That's blood and air in the chest cavity outside of the lungs. So it's in an area where it shouldn't be. This person had numerous injuries.
Are you able to compare these injuries and that photo in this Exhibit 206? And did you compare them to your review of the autopsy report and other medical records of Mr. O'Keefe?
Sustained.
Answer the question? Oh. Okay.
You can take that down. From your review, did Mr. O'Keefe sustain any liver laceration?
No.
Did Mr. O'Keefe sustain any gaping, as you called it, lacerations to the right forearm?
No.
Did Mr. O'Keefe sustain any pneumothorax injuries that you were describing with regard to 206?
No pneumothorax.
Let's switch to another topic. Let's talk about clothing of the decedent. In forming your opinion, did you consider Mr. O'Keefe's clothing in relation to his wounds?
Yes.
If we could, Your Honor, have Exhibit 150 in evidence published.
Okay.
Do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 150?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's a picture of part of the hoodie, sweatshirt or shirt that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing at the time.
And wearing when?
At the time of his death.
And did you evaluate this photo as part of your review of the autopsy report?
Yes.
And we're going to come back to this. If we could please switch to, Your Honor, 147C in evidence.
Okay.
Thank you. And what is 147C?
So this is a close-up of the sleeve of that shirt that we just saw on the previous image. And there's a hole or defect here in the sleeve, which I'm circling with the pointer. And there's a label that labels it number 1. And so I see this hole that is rather round and appears to have some fabric coming out of the hole towards the exterior of the jacket or the shirt.
Did you attribute any significance to the shape of the wound? And if so, what significance?
The shape of the hole, yes. So it's rounded. I actually attributed a lot of significance to that.
Describe a lot of significance that you attributed to this hole.
Well, I believe that this hole was made by a canine tooth. And with the tooth going into the shirt, reaching the skin, and then coming out of the shirt, pulling out some fabric with it.
And we'll come back to this. If we could, Mr. Wolk, go to 147D as in David that's in evidence. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes.
What is it?
A round hole in the shirt, again with some fabric fibers pointing towards the outside of the shirt.
Is this the same hole that we just saw on 147C or a different hole?
Could we go back? I don't know.
Okay, so let's now go back to Exhibit 150. What significance, if any, do you give to the various triangles that are on the hoodie? Could you describe to the jury what those are and what's their purpose?
So the triangles are labels that were placed by either the police or the crime lab or someone, and the point of the triangle generally is pointing towards a hole in the shirt. As you can see, there are multiple ones here, and I want to make sure that you don't confuse it with this rather large defect, which is caused by something else.
So let's start with each one, and we'll go through these quickly. Let's start and zoom in on number 1. What did you conclude about the source of that hole in the hoodie?
Sustained.
Did you evaluate what is depicted as number 1 in that slide as part of your review?
Yes.
And what was your evaluation?
Sustained.
Let's go back and zoom out. Have you in your career examined clothing either as part of your forensic pathology practice or your emergency medicine practice to determine the source of defects in clothing?
Yes.
How many times have you done that approximately in your career?
Several hundred.
And have you, in those several hundred times, have you ever had to reach a conclusion as to whether there was any connection between defects in clothing and wounds to humans?
Many times.
Can you give some examples of the many times you've had to look at clothing and defects in clothing to assist you in determining wound recognition in a human?
Yes. So let me clarify. It's mostly used in forensic pathology, not so much in emergency medicine. The clothing and the cause of the wound is as important as in emergency medicine as the treatment of the wound. But in forensic pathology, it's a key component to any examination where you think that it was an unnatural death. So, so I've done it in gunshot wounds, in stab wounds, multiple times. Looking at the defects, looking at the direction of the, of what I think the bullet, bullet track was, determining entry and exit wounds. In stab wounds, I've utilized them to help determine offensive and defensive wounds or injuries. So yes, many times.
Have you ever performed that analysis? You testified earlier, 500 to 1,000 evaluations of dog-inflicted wounds on humans. Have you ever performed the analysis of defects in clothing and compared them to wounds on humans in the context of dog-inflicted wounds on humans?
I don't think so. Perhaps.
Well, yes. So in terms of, have there been any instances of doing that in your career? Have you done that at all in your career?
Maybe that one child.
All right. So let's go now to you were discussing the defects in the arm as well as the wounds in the arm and then the defects in the clothing. In terms of back to Exhibit 1. In terms of that pattern that is in the arm, and in terms, let's go back to the hoodie. I'll strike that. Have you in your career, in the terms of evaluating motor vehicle accidents, have you evaluated the clothing of victims of motor vehicle accidents?
Yes.
How many times roughly have you evaluated what clothing looks like in terms of motor vehicle accidents?
Well, in many cases, I had to cut off the clothing in the emergency department, so I observed the clothing then, and then in the post-mortem cases, I evaluated the clothing, but oftentimes sometimes it wasn't helpful.
Have you ever evaluated clothing in determining whether or not the defects in the clothing are consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle accident? Have you ever evaluated that as a forensic pathologist?
Not specifically.
Right. And in terms of your observations in either emergency medicine or forensic pathology, have you ever observed defects from motor vehicle accidents in clothing?
Yes.
Is what is depicted in this exhibit consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle accident?
Sustained.
In determining, let's go back to Exhibit 1, please. In determining and reaching your opinion with regard to the source of these wounds, is it necessary for you to reach that opinion to see a specific dog to determine whether the wounds are from a dog in general?
No.
And in your experience that you talked about earlier today, the 500 to 1,000, was it ever necessary in that experience to go locate the dog, to see the dog, to treat or evaluate the patient?
No.
Why is it, well, in terms of, we're going to move to another category, studies. Did you review any studies informing your opinions in this case?
Can we put the lights on and take this?
Yeah,
down,
yes,
Mr.
thank you,
Alessi?
Your Honor. Yes.
Yes, many.
And did those studies that you review support or not support your conclusions in this case?
Sustained.
Which studies did you rely upon?
Well, I reviewed quite a few, 10 to 20 in depth, and I relied a lot on 2 of the articles.
Do you recall the names of the lead authors in the studies that you said, that you just referenced?
Yes, one of them was Demuniak.
Could you spell that, please?
I wish. DEMUNNYCK, I believe.
And was there?
And then there was another one, Pollack, POLLACK.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Your Honor, my recollection is correct. We've already pre-marked as exhibits for identification these studies, 2 studies. I may be incorrect in that. If so, I have studies. I'm going to show them to Mr. Yes, thank you. So we can just make sure I have all the pages. Do you have these handed out for the order?
Oh, I have none.
Okay, if I can just have a moment, Robert. Okay, I've got them. These are them. If I could have marked for identification as one document, please.
Exhibit PPP for ID.
One more, Madam Court Reporter, thank you.
And exhibit QQQ for ID.
Mr. Alessi and court reporters.
Sure. Yes, Your Honor.
Which is what?
Exhibit PPP is the Munich, and exhibit QQQ is Pollock, and those are the lead author names. You're welcome. Yeah, I leave them with the witness, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Russell, I have provided you with those two exhibits. I would ask you to just briefly take a look at them and let me know whether you recognize those as the articles that you were referencing before.
Yes.
Now let's start out with the Munich study. Is that exhibit PPP?
PP.
Right. So is this the study that you referenced earlier in your testimony?
Yes.
Can you briefly describe for the jury how that study related to the opinions in this case?
Okay. Sustained.
Are these the studies that you cite to as a basis for support for your opinions in this case?
Yes.
And is QQQ a study that also supports your opinion in this case?
Yes.
Now, in terms of your conclusions with regard to, if we can go back once more to exhibit number 1. With regard to your opinion on the cause of these injuries, can you once again state your opinion as to the cause of these injuries?
I believe these injuries were caused by a dog attack.
So I'm going to strike that word.
Yeah, so Dr. Russell, if you could, with regard to bite parlance, can you state what your opinion is with regard to bite? So do you have an opinion as to what caused these injuries?
Yes. I believe that these injuries are the result of dog bites and or claw marks.
And do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
That is all the questions I have for this witness at this time.
All right. Thank you.
You want this? Okay.
May I?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Russell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brennan.
Dr. Russell, we've met before.
Yes.
I've asked you questions before.
Yes.
And you've testified before where I've had a chance to ask you about some of your statements and opinions, haven't I?
Yes.
Before this case, had you ever testified as an expert in dog bites in any federal court in the United States?
No.
Before this case, had you ever testified in any state court in anywhere in the country as an expert in dog bites?
No.
Other than this case, have you ever testified in a courtroom as an expert about dog bites?
No.
Last year, you learned that there was litigation regarding this case, Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, correct?
Yes.
You learned a little bit of information about it, and it piqued your interest, didn't it?
Yes.
Did you know that the case was receiving a lot of attention?
No.
Did you know that it was on television?
I had no idea until I got here.
You spoke to a colleague in Los Angeles, correct?
I'm sorry, I spoke to who?
A colleague?
I spoke to a district attorney in Los Angeles.
And did you just bring up the subject, or did that person bring it up to you?
I brought it up.
When you brought that up, is it because you knew of the relationship between that district attorney and somebody on the defense team?
Yes.
You wanted to get involved in this high-profile case, didn't you?
No.
Well, you weren't called by anybody on the defense and retained as an expert in the traditional sense, were you?
That's correct.
It was after you reached out yourself and interjected yourself into this case, true?
I did so for a reason. And the reason being that I knew I was one of the only people in the United States board certified and residency trained in emergency medicine and also residency trained in forensic pathology. And therefore I had a unique skill or knowledge set. And I was one of the very few people that had the knowledge of dog bites, as well as those other trainings.
And because of the fact that you held this opinion about yourself, you wanted to get involved in this very high-profile case, didn't you?
I thought I could help clarify the issues as to whether or not this could be a dog bite, and maybe they could move on to something else if it wasn't.
Did you want to get involved?
No, not really.
Inevitably, you got hired by the defense, didn't you?
Yes, I reluctantly agreed.
And they paid for your time?
They are paying for the time.
Yes. Did you know that there was a relationship between the district attorney you spoke to in California and somebody on this defense table?
I know, yes.
So when you spoke to the district attorney, did you have the hope that they would reach out on your behalf to get you involved in this case?
As I said, I hoped that they could reach out to the team and I could help clarify issues so that they could move on. If it wasn't, if these weren't dog bites, then no sense spending a whole bunch of time on it.
After you testified in this case last year, you then began to advertise yourself as a dog bite expert, didn't you?
I had advertised myself many years ago as a dog bite expert, I think. I'm not sure, but yes, I did advertise myself as a emergency medicine and forensic pathology expert.
Did you take
with other, sub interests.
Sure. Did you take a photograph of you testifying at trial and put it on a website to promote your accomplishments?
It's a listing service for physicians. And yes, there is a photograph.
So you took a photograph from your participation in this event.
Yes, that's there.
And you used that photograph in your participation at this event to try to procure future work, didn't you?
I wouldn't say that was the reason, no.
When you listed a number of things that you have experience in after this case, you then added that you were an expert in dog bites, didn't you?
I believe I am an expert in dog bites, yes.
But after this case, and after you took the photograph from this case, and after you created this advertising, You then added the fact that you were an expert in dog bites, didn't you?
It was all at the same time. And it was submitted at the same time.
Right. After this case, after you participated or
Well-
volunteered to involve yourself in this case, you then used it as a marketing opportunity, didn't you?
Well, I had retired from my full-time job and I had time, and I wanted to get more involved in some forensic legal cases, and not specifically dog bite cases. I have much more experience with other cases.
Undoubtedly, I respect that. But simply, after you testified in this case, you did use your participation as a way to try to garner future interest in cases and income, didn't you?
I did, but I did not mention this case.
Have you testified in any other court since this case as a dog bite expert?
No,
You had written a few articles that were peer reviewed on dog bites back in, is it the 1990s?
yes,
And they involved law enforcement canines.
yes,
And you describe in those articles how a law enforcement canine grabs and holds. Is that the technique they call it?
yes,
Where they lock their jaw and then they pull and hold on to the subject that they're attacking or holding.
yes, that's what they were trained to do back then.
And you would agree that there's a difference between generally the way a domestic dog bites and a law enforcement dog bites.
Generally, yes.
Since those two articles in 1990, have you authored anything else regarding dog bites?
No,
You had mentioned that you had gone to seminars regarding identification. Now, I had a chance to ask you a number of months ago about some details about training and education you have on pattern recognition analysis as it specifically relates to dog bites. Remember, I asked you those questions a number of months ago?
I believe you did.
And I'd asked you if you could give us any specific listed trainings that you had regarding pattern recognition analysis of dog bites. And at that time, you did not have any names of any classes or seminars or certificates that you have. You mentioned again today that you have attended seminars regarding dog identification analysis. Do you now know some of those trainings and seminars? And are any of those listed on your CV?
The trainings that I went to on bite marks in general, they were bite marks in general, and included things like how to determine what was a human bite, how to differentiate a human bite from a dog bite. But no, I did not specifically attend seminars limited to dog bites only. However, actually, there was one this past February that I did attend at the American Academy of Forensic Science.
Over your many, many decades, you did not attend any seminars on pattern recognition analysis of dog bites, did you?
Of specifically dog bites, no.
I only want to talk about dog bites. I know you're well trained and educated. I respect that, but I want to talk about dog bites. You didn't attain any certificates in pattern recognition analysis of dog bites, did you?
I don't think there are any that exist, any training programs like that.
In fact, forensically, have you ever been presented with a wound and been asked to determine whether or not the source of it was a dog bite, other than right here in this very case? Have you ever been asked to do that in your entire history?
In my clinical career, perhaps once or twice, but not, not that I can give you a specific name.
Well, the couple times, tell us what stands out. When were you asked ever over your entire career to do a forensic evaluation of a wound and identify whether it was a dog bite? When did that happen?
A forensic evaluation? No, never,
Never.
never.
Okay.
It just doesn't come up.
Okay. And so this is the first shot, the first crack you've had at looking at a photograph and trying to make a determination based just on a photograph whether or not the wound is generated from a particular mechanism, and in this case, your opinion, a dog bite.
No, actually, I disagree. I've been taking photographs of dog bites since the 1990s.
And when you took the photographs, you knew they were dog bites.
I did know that there were dog bites.
Have you-
Yes, I have a collection.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That was it.
So not when you knew it was a dog bite and you took a photo. I know you have an interest. I'm asking, other than this case, there was never, ever a time in your career where you were presented with a photo and asked to give an opinion whether the mechanism of injury was a dog bite, other than this case.
That's correct.
So this is not a pattern recognition analysis engagement that you have any experience in before this effort.
I've recognized that pattern many times.
I appreciate your opinion, but I want to ask my question. You do not have experience over your long, accomplished career in the effort of pattern recognition analysis of dog bite wounds. Isn't that fair to say?
Okay.
You mentioned before, and you just mentioned again, so I want to ask you some more questions. You believe that you are uniquely qualified to look at a photograph and give an opinion about the source of the injury.
I'm not uniquely qualified. That's done all the time in forensic pathology. Many forensic pathologists do that.
Did you just say you're one of the very few physicians in the United States who has both the forensic and the clinical experience to look at a photograph and make a determination, the mechanism of injury?
No, I said, if I said that, then that was incorrect. I meant dog bites. But your question just now was not specific to dog bites.
You're right.
Postmortem photographs are used all the time in forensic pathology for second opinions.
You're right. My apologies. Did you say today and before, have you said that you believe you're one of the only few physicians in the United States who could authoritatively distinguish between causes of wounds when it relates to dog bites?
I did say that, and that's because of my unique training. I don't know of another doctor in the whole United States that did 2 residencies, one in emergency medicine and one in forensic pathology, and has a lifelong interest in dog bites.
So, Dr. Russell, from your perspective, as far as you know, you were the only person in the entire United States of America who is qualified to look at a photograph and make a determination whether the wound was derived from a dog bite.
No, I am one of I'm the only physician that I know of that can do that. There may be, a few others out there. There may be, but I don't know of any other physicians that can do that.
Do you recognize anybody other than yourself who has this very particular expertise to be able to do this kind of work?
I'm not aware of anyone.
You were a medical examiner, a forensic pathologist,
Yes.
and you know there's about, or would you agree there's probably about 900 to 1,000 medical examiners around the country at the same time over a period of time?
I believe that there might be, there's probably, I think there's around 500 or 600 practicing forensic pathologists.
And do you think because they are forensic pathologists, those 500 or 600 people have the unique qualifications as you do to be able to give an opinion about the genesis of a wound?
Wounds in general, perhaps. Dog bite wounds, I doubt that very many of them have a specific interest in dog bite wounds.
And so you think that of all those forensic pathologists, medical examiners, you think that qualification and experience itself is not enough to qualify somebody to give an opinion on a photograph about the genesis of a wound related to dog bites?
Well, if a forensic pathologist has autopsied 1 or 2 cases of dog bite wounds, versus my experience with over 500 to 1,000 cases of dog bite wounds, I'm not so sure that that person would be a very good expert in that kind of a case.
Have you ever heard of a doctor named Dr. La Posada?
I've heard of Dr. La Posada.
Have you ever read any reports by Dr. La Posada?
No,
Has anybody ever shared with you any information or opinions of Dr. La Posada?
I believe she has a very good reputation.
Have you ever, well, how do you believe that? Who told you
Because I've heard of her name at national organizations. I believe she's given presentations nationally. I've seen her name, over a dozen years or so.
that? Do you know whether or not she has any participation in this case?
I believe she does.
Well, so you know when you're providing accolades that she has maybe some involvement in this case? Do you know that?
I would provide those same accolades if she didn't have involvement in this case.
Do you know that she has involvement in this case?
I believe she does. The attorneys have not shared everything with me
Well,
in terms of who the witnesses are.
somebody must have shared her name. Who shared her name with you?
I'm very familiar with her name
Sure.
outside this case.
Who shared her name that she may be a participant in this case?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
Well, somebody met.
I think I got a file or something, but yeah.
So when you were reviewing this case, did you get materials from any of the attorneys authored by Dr. La Posada?
I don't think I read a report. I was very interested in reading a report by Dr. La Posada. I was very interested, but I didn't see one.
So when you received materials in this case, you didn't read all the materials the defense gave you?
I don't believe they gave me the report.
What report?
Any report that Dr. La Posada might have written.
Do you know whether or not you've received the report or not?
Received something that had her name on it. I don't remember what it was, but I was looking for a medical examiner's or a report, an actual report, and I did not see one.
Dr. Russell, you are meticulous when you look and examine things.
Right.
So you would know what you've received and what you've read and what you haven't. So the fact that you're telling us that you saw something with her name on it, can you give us a little more information and share with us what it is you actually received about this Dr. La Posada? What did you get from the defense?
I saw something. I think it was the name of a file folder, but I looked for a report and there was no report in it.
Did you ever ask for it?
I didn't ask because I didn't ask. I really wanted to read it, but I didn't. It wasn't given to me, so I didn't ask.
Were you ever told what other people's opinions might be regarding those photographs?
I'm aware that there was a Dr. Sheridan involved in a previous proceeding, and he believed that those were consistent with dog bites.
Did you ever receive any reports from the defense about what other persons' opinions would be in this trial about dog bites?
Oh, yes, I received a report authored by a non-physician. Yes.
So when you say non-physician, you're trying to make the point because you think that person might be your opponent in this case?
I don't have any opponents.
Okay, so why did you qualify him as a non-physician?
Because I believe that in order to really understand wounds on a human being, one needs to have treated wounds, seen lots of wounds, and I think that the person that is best qualified for that is a physician.
So a medical examiner wouldn't cut it, in your opinion?
Medical examiner is a physician.
So you think a medical examiner has enough experience to come in and give an opinion on
So-
dog bites?
Some, but in their case, I would hope that they have had actual clinical experience with autopsying some cases where there were dog bite wounds, because I don't think they worked in the emergency room or any other clinical setting where they treated people. So I'd want to see if they had experience with dog bites.
I'm doctor as a disqualification. How about a dog trainer? Would a dog trainer who's not a doctor have the experience in your mind to come in and give an opinion about photographs and the genesis of the wounds?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
How about a non-doctor, as you said, you've made a distinction. They're simply a dog trainer, maybe even an uncertified dog trainer. Would that person have the qualifications in your mind to be able to look at photographs and determine whether or not the cause of the injury is a dog bite?
There may be a certain small subset of people who have, very much experience with dog bites that could qualify as suggesting that these are consistent with dog bites. But I don't think that they could definitively. I'm not. I think that someone could who dealt with many dog bites in the past on humans could possibly say that they were consistent with.
Even if they didn't have the clinical experience?
Well, I prefer that to hear that information from a physician, but I wouldn't rule out that only doctors, only a physician, MD, could say that something was a dog bite.
It seems like the standard is now kind of changing a little bit. Because when I asked you,
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain.
you mentioned the other person, you disqualified the person because they weren't a doctor. It seems now in some instances, you're willing to accept a non-doctor into your very select group of experts.
If someone, well, I can explain. If someone had looked at perhaps hundreds and hundreds of wounds inflicted by a dog that they know was inflicted by a dog, and they saw the resulting photographs on a person, I think that particular person may be able to make some comment as to whether or not some wounds are consistent. However, if in terms of a medical examiner, if they've autopsied one case or two cases of dog bites and they're trying to testify based on some pictures, I would be a little concerned about that.
Does qualification for this type of business, in your mind, depend on who hires you?
Absolutely not.
Suffice to say, you've never taken a class in the forensic analysis of dog bites.
I don't think any class exists.
But I'm asking about your experience.
Well, that's correct.
You haven't, have you?
That's correct. I can't take a course that doesn't exist.
You've never engaged in any type of opinion, looking at photographs, and then had that opinion peer reviewed by other dog bite experts, have you?
No.
Do you have any experience in veterinarian medicine?
I'm aware of it. That's my experience.
Do you have any accomplishments like degrees?
No.
Now, you've testified a number of times in this case, haven't you?
Yes.
And when you testify, you know there's a court reporter and there are transcripts, correct?
Yes.
You originally testified when you first came out and volunteered to testify last year, and there was a hearing before trial, wasn't there?
Excuse me? Say again,
When
please.
you volunteered to come out last year, there was a hearing before you testified at trial, wasn't there?
Yes.
Do you remember that was on June 18, 2022?
Sounds right.
And then you testified at trial on June 21st, 2022.
Yes.
I didn't have the privilege of meeting you on either of those events, did I?
No.
But since then, we have met,
Yes.
and we had a chance to speak at a subsequent hearing on December 12, 2024.
Yes.
And then after that, we again had an opportunity to discuss this on January 7, 2025.
Yes.
When you reviewed the case, when you first reviewed it before you testified last year, you had very limited information, didn't you?
Yes.
You had just an autopsy report, photographs from the coroner, photographs from the hospital, an emergency room report. Yes?
Yes. I had more than that.
The medical examiner file had a toxicology report.
Yes. And there was more.
Okay.
I believe there was a dog bite, a town of Canton report.
Okay. So when you had an opportunity to look at the medical examiner's report, you yourself had been a medical examiner, correct?
Yes.
And there's a unique advantage of actually conducting an autopsy as opposed to just looking at photographs, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And if you are actually conducting the autopsy, you firsthand can make observations about injuries, make measurements, and see things that don't always appear in photographs.
That's correct.
And when you would do medical exams, you had a distinct advantage over people who would later see your work, a written report, or photographs, because you were there actually conducting the investigation.
Yes.
And it's for that reason that when you testified before, you have acknowledged that you relied on Dr. Scorti-Bello's report for information,
Yes.
because you didn't have the benefit of doing measurements or looking at depths or anything else firsthand.
Yes. Correct.
And when you looked at that photograph that you discussed with the jury, you also had a chance to see Dr. Scorti-Bello's report regarding the abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Yes.
She described those abrasions as superficial, didn't she?
Yes.
She actually gave measurements, 3 centimeter superficial abrasion on the right medial upper arm. Right?
Yes.
You not only read that, you deferred to her ability to have a firsthand observation, and you accepted that as true, didn't you?
Yes, but there's no interpretation of that abrasion.
Multiple abrasions from 2 to 3 millimeters and up to 7 centimeters on the posterior right arm and forearm.
Yes.
Did you read that from
I
Dr.
did.
Scorti-Bello?
Yes.
Did you accept her finding and observation? And
Yes.
you would agree she was in a far superior position than you when she made these observations and notes, correct?
They are not inconsistent with what I said.
That's not what I asked, though.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be sharp. I
Okay.
apologize. Did you rely on her ability and firsthand observation of those wounds?
Yes.
And did you appreciate or accept the fact she had a superior opportunity to evaluate those wounds firsthand that you did not have the benefit of?
She made no interpretation of those ones.
Well, did you know that Dr. Scorti-Bello had described them as superficial?
They are.
Did you know that she said there was no depth and no puncture?
Not inconsistent with what I said.
I understand, doctor, but I'm asking you, do you
I-
know that her position is that there was no puncture and no depth to those wounds?
Objection, Your Honor. Can we have the witness see the report that he keeps referring to?
Can you answer that question without seeing it, or do you need to see it?
Well, I remember it, but there's no inconsistency here. I agree with that.
Would you accept that Dr. Scorti-Bello's opinion is that there was no depth and no puncture to those wounds?
May I see the report?
It might not be in the report. I'm asking about any testimony, anything that she's ever said. Would you agree or accept her position that there is no puncture or depth to those wounds?
Objection, Your Honor. Like all the questions that were about an autopsy. Yeah. Sorry, Your Honor.
Okay.
Well, sidebar. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Oh boy. How do you feel the cross is going? Yeah, did you see that look to the jury? Here's the channeling your inner Alessi moment. Yes, yes. In sidebar number 11, we have 20 minutes left to hit 3 more. I don't think we're going to make it, but we got so close. Oh, no. Well, yes, we need 2 more to beat. 2 more to tie, 3 more to beat. Hmm? Mm. Well, she never even asked to look at the mouth of the dog who did it. I don't know. She definitely was just making her opinion from the photo. He did make it appear that way, didn't he, Maggie? By right out of the gate asking how she's, pushing back more on her reasons for being there. A different angle on the fan there. I'm surprised that the defense doesn't have more objections during the testimony, actually. I haven't been hearing them. Yes, I think you could be Rocket Couch. You could be the legal expert. What I don't know if that qualifies you as an architect, but I hear what you're saying. I get it. I totally get it. You know, and I mean, the one thing that we can't ignore is that this issue of whether it was a dog bite or not was out there before she became the defense's expert. Why she got involved is she wanted to answer that question for them, as they were already. It was already out there as part of the challenge against the charges. Oh, excuse me. I had to put on a sweater. It's getting a bit chilly. Yeah. And a family member in the judicial system helped get their lawyer in the DA office. Ah, yeah. But they have the two papers now, Liam, that she was talking about. But I am interested in the one she wrote. I have noticed a little bit of a difference in this expert's proclamations, and that's what they are. Actually, her conclusions. She is actually stating that she thinks it's a dog bite. But during the testimony, she said it was a possibility, one of the many possibilities. It's been a long day of trial. This is a long sidebar. I was wondering that, Mindy, isn't it just as possible that while he was laying in the snow, like a raccoon was over there or something? Maybe, but still, to me, I don't know. Not very reasonable. Middle of a blizzard. Sounds like they're coming back to the desks.
May I?
Yes, please.
Dr. Russell, I read to you the measurements that were in Dr. Scortibello's report. Are you aware that she testified that these superficial abrasions did not have any depth or any puncture?
I don't recall that.
Well, would you agree if Dr. Scortibello testified in this court that those superficial abrasions did not have any puncture or depth? Would you agree with that assessment?
Objection, Your Honor.
In that form, it's sustained.
Would you agree that the superficial abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm had no punctures?
I agree.
Would you agree that the abrasions, the superficial abrasions on Mr. O'Keefe's arm had no depth?
No measurable depth, yes.
Between the last time you testified and then you testified here today, have you spoken to the attorneys at all regarding the issue of punctures?
No,
Because you are agreeing today that those superficial abrasions did not have any punctures, right?
they don't appear to have any punctures.
But you, in the past, have testified very, very differently than that, haven't you?
No,
Yes, she did in the
Now,
vote.
we've spoken many times. I'm going to go through many of those examples later, but we'll do that a little bit later, Dr. Russell.
I'm gonna impeach her.
Over the course of your many testimonies under oath, would it be fair to say that you have changed your opinions about the superficial abrasions to John O'Keefe's arm many times?
I don't believe that's fair to say.
In the past, when you were describing Mr. O'Keefe's superficial abrasions on his arm, did you give varying and different opinions about the cause of each individual wound, area of wound?
I don't believe so.
When you first gave opinions, that was before the last proceeding. You came in and you were questioned before you testified in that initial proceeding, right? I'm trying to be as specific as I can. You testified last year.
Yes,
And before-
in
Please.
there was a hearing and then there was a proceeding.
Okay. That prior hearing, can we call the first event the prior hearing and the next one the prior proceeding?
I'm confused.
I don't want to confuse you. I'm just trying to follow the rules. You testified twice last year, didn't you?
3 times.
3 times. Okay. The first time you testified was just before the judge?
Yes,
Okay. When you first testified before the judge, do you remember that you had uncertainty about how each and every one of those wounds was caused?
I don't remember that.
And do you remember when you then testified a couple days later at the proceeding that some of your opinions changed from the first time you testified?
I don't believe that.
And then when you later met me and we had a chance to talk over the last 2 events, December and January, would it be fair to say that your opinions regarding the individual areas of wound changed?
I don't believe so.
Okay. At some point before or during our conversations in December and January, you wrote a report, didn't you?
Yes,
When you wrote that report, you hadn't written a report before the first time you came in and testified, had you?
that's correct.
And it was between those hearings in December and in January where you wrote your first report.
Sounds correct.
You dated that report December 9th, 2024. Does that ring a bell?
Yes,
When you wrote that report, you did not write that report alone, did you?
I did.
You had some help, didn't you?
Not in the content of the report.
Well, you sent the report back a number of times for review and revisions, didn't you?
In terms of organization,
And some of the language in this report is really not your language. It's the language of somebody who helped you write some of this, isn't it?
you know, if somebody helped me write it, it would have been much better written than that.
Didn't you agree that you had some assistance with the report? Haven't you testified to that before?
And no, and in terms of organization, there was some comments though, this sentence belongs, you know, with this paragraph or the, you know, whatever. But in terms of content, that was my work.
Well, it was your report, correct?
It's my report.
And when you write a report, it's your words, not somebody else's. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
But nevertheless, you had somebody assisting you. True.
In terms of organization, yes.
Who was helping you with the report?
It was somebody from the law office.
Well, it was this gentleman right here, Attorney Alessi, who just asked you questions. He helped you,
No,
didn't he?
actually, it wasn't.
Was it from his law firm that somebody helped you?
I believe so, but it was in terms of organization.
Do you remember who was helping you with your report?
I don't remember her name.
Would you agree that after that report was written, many of your opinions changed?
No,
In your report, you provide your background. Yes?
yes,
And you've been licensed to practice medicine since 1988
yes,
as a physician?
yes.
And you've been licensed to practice medicine as a surgeon?
It's called, in California, it's called physician and surgeon license.
Do you have a physician and surgeon's license?
I do.
Okay. Have you ever practiced as a surgeon?
Well, in the emergency department, we do surgery. We have to do some surgery sometimes. We have to open up people's chests and, and compress the heart sometimes when they're have gunshot wounds to the chest. I've had to put chest tubes in. I've had to debride dog bite wounds and other wounds. So yes, there is a component of surgery.
If you do stitches, that's considered surgery, isn't it?
Maybe.
Well, medically speaking, stitches is surgery.
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. Do you have a surgeon's license?
I have a physician and surgeon's license in California.
Now, when you first looked at this case and testified, do you remember when you were looking at Mr. O'Keefe's superficial wounds, you said that you thought they appeared to be consistent with an animal attack?
I do remember that.
And when you were describing animal attack, you were a lot less specific than you were today, weren't you?
Yes.
You were less sure about your opinion when you first testified about this case than you provided to this jury today.
I was certain that it was a dog attack. However, as I mentioned before to you, in medicine, we're taught never, nothing is 100%, and therefore never say, anything's 100%. So that's why I gave that that generalization. However, I have reviewed the case. I personally was certain that was a dog, that those were dog marks. Now, I have reviewed this case over and over and over again. Plus, I've read additional articles more than once, and which substantiate again my findings. So, so my degree of certainty perhaps increased.
So when you first testified in this case, back in June of 2022, are you agreeing that your testimony was less certain than today?
I believed that it was a dog attack at that time.
When you testified, you didn't say dog attack, you said animal attack at the beginning, didn't you?
Yes.
And when you were asked about the cause, you said that it could be bite or scratch wounds.
Correct.
So back in June, when you were looking at individual wounds, you, at that time anyways, were unable to differentiate between bite and scratch wounds.
They are very similar.
I understand, but today you seem pretty unequivocal. So I want to go back to the beginning and see the evolution. I'm asking a question.
All right. So the argumentative part is out. Ask the question, Mr. Brennan.
I want to go back to identify the evolution of your opinions. So let's start at the beginning.
So question, please.
At the beginning, before your opinion evolved, you started with an opinion that this could have been either bite or scratch wounds, right?
Yes.
And if there was actually a methodology where you could identify superficial abrasions and make a determination whether it was from an animal or a dog, there would be something definitive, specific, where you could identify a scratch from a bite wound, wouldn't there be?
Not unless there was a piece of tooth in the wound or a piece of nail. There would otherwise not be any specificity.
You talked about patterns when you first testified back in June of last year.
Mhm.
And when you talked about the patterns, again, you had some uncertainty whether those patterns were caused by nails, claws, or could have been caused by teeth. Isn't that fair to say originally that was your position?
There is some overlap in terms of the appearances. They can appear very similar, and they can be arranged very similar in terms of parallel lines.
In fact, when you first testified, you weren't consistently even saying that it was a dog, or as you say today, dog attack. You were saying, in your opinion, they were the result of animal bites or scratches. That was what you originally opined, isn't it?
We just went through that, yes.
And at some point, you said that it might most likely be a large dog. Do you remember that?
Objection, Your Honor. Can we approach with regard to this line of questioning?
So why don't we break for today? All right, so jurors, we're not going to finish this today in the next 5 minutes, so it seems like it's a good place to break. I do have to give you those same cautions. Please do not discuss this
Okay.
case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. Please be very careful with your social media use. Tomorrow is also a full day. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Dr. Russell, you can again just follow.
Thank you.
Please. Close it open, follow me.
Okay, thank you.
That is different. She's
Can I see
discussing
counsel
it
while the jury's filing out, please?
before the sidebar, so she doesn't waste their time. Which usually is a sidebar. She comes back and then releases them. They have to sit there and watch them talking and whispering together over there on the side. So there you go. Yeah, no, Teresa. This was the this is the Commonwealth. This was Hank Brennan on cross of Dr. Marie Russell, who is a defense witness. It's the Commonwealth lawyer, Hank Brennan. He is pushing Maggie, I believe, stronger on her than he did even in voir dire. Yeah, so I would say. Oh, Mandy. Well, Lori claims to be sick. She showed up in a wheelchair because she's nauseous and she has headaches and she's coming down with something or whatever. Well, she actually cried hysterically in court because the judge said, okay, then we won't do it this way. He first pressed that they had to stay on schedule. Sometimes when you're not feeling well, you got to take a little medicine, do whatever. She says she couldn't go on. He said, please talk to your counsel. Maybe they can help you with jury selection because they're still in the questioning part. Perhaps you would like your advisory counsel to go forward for you today while you recover. She didn't want to do that. She said she has a right to represent herself. He said, fine. Then we will take tomorrow off so you can recover and we'll be back Wednesday morning. You can't force me to come back Wednesday. She breaks out in hysterics, like crying that she's so ill. She's holding her head up. She's being very dramatic. She said, why do I have to come back Wednesday? You can come to the jail to see if I'm okay. He says, no, I'm not going to use that option. You could come back Wednesday morning. He then, because she's in a wheelchair, she refused to get out of the wheelchair and sit in a regular chair so that the jury could come in just to be dismissed. He just asked her to, so that there was no prejudice, to get into a regular chair. And they would take the wheelchair away. The jury would come in. He would tell them what's going on. And then they would be dismissed until Wednesday. And she refused. She started crying, like carrying on. Oh, she's doing even better. The full dramatics, like barely holding her head up, all hunched over in the chair. Like, if she is sick, I feel bad, that, being in jail and everything like that. But she's, apparently not quarantined. So it's not like, it's not COVID and it's not, if she's got a virus, a couple of days is usually enough to feel better. For her to throw a hissy fit because he said Wednesday, which is 2 days away, that leads me to believe it was a bit dramatic in that she's pulling something. Yeah. Yeah. And he said, I'm going to be your trial lawyer. whether we do this today, we do this tomorrow, Wednesday, or we do it sometime in June, I'm still going to be your trial lawyer. I think he thinks it's histrionics because she didn't get him tossed from the case. And now she says that he's bullying her and harassing her. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Teresa, yeah, but he won't recuse himself, and he's so tired of her. Like she definitely took a risk in saying everything she did about him, and now she has to come up in front of him. She really made it more difficult for herself. The last motion was denied. We're going to talk about it tomorrow night. But when he did deny it, he actually put words in there he has never done before. So I don't know. I hope that she feels better and she can attend on Wednesday morning. If not, they're going to have to delay the case. And the problem is they have like 50 odd, almost 60 people waiting to be Bourdain questioned for jury duty. They don't know whether they're serving or not. And they have to keep coming back in. This would be like they already canceled it last week. Now they canceled it again today and putting it off till Wednesday. These people are getting yanked around. It's really not fair. And he's trying to be fair to the jury, which is why he wanted her to continue this afternoon. He wasn't going to make her do opening statements, but he wanted to at least sit the jury so they knew when, that they were impaneled. He was just asking her for the afternoon, Bush. Oh my goodness. Like, wow. The demons are trying to escape her body because even they are scared to be associated with her. Oh my gosh, Mandy. Oh, jeez. I wonder if she's going to give her more second chances or just let her dig her own hole this time. I think, you know what? In the last hearing, he just refused to give her any direction. And when she kept asking his advice, well, what do I do about this? And he was like, ask your counsel. Like he wouldn't even talk to her about it. He's done trying to help her. He's so patient. He does try to give direction to her. He went out of her way, even after the recusal in the beginning of jury instructions and all. But then she started attacking him and everything, and he was like, "Nah, this is not good." Yeah, she really has. She's annoyed him. He did look annoyed. He also said to the jury, I mean, there's a good thread. I did put a thread in the room. Hold on. Let me get it from my feed. I'll give it to you guys in the chat. When I do these threads, they you don't necessarily have to have Twitter to open them because they are you can actually just open them on a PC. Okay, this is the thread app. In it's play by play what happened so far. Well, Judge Berinsky was actually appalled to talk to the jury. He said it's never happened to him before. And he was embarrassed that they had to keep coming back. He did stop her a lot. Yep. Yeah, he did in the beginning. Rocket Couch, what I was referring to is just this last hearing. Like he was helping her in the beginning of it at the end of jury selection on the one day last week. And then she had given him so much trouble like that. And by the end of the back and forth with them, he was finally just talk to your counsel. Ask your counsel. Like he wasn't going to tell her anything else. But yes, all during the first trial, he really went out of his way to try to make sure she didn't hurt herself, in all this ludicrousy. She'll be entering the court muttering brains. Yes, she'll be the next zombie. Yes. She could be. She could be, Liam. Maybe she got the zombie illness. You know, after watching last night's movie, if she picks up a banjo, then we know for sure. I have to say that was quite the unique take on a vampire film. I kind of liked it. It's something different. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. Which is a reminder, if you guys too would like to have watch parties, criminal court case discussions, access to even more information in regards to all the cases that we're covering, even game nights, just fun in general, become a member of either the YouTube channel or my Patreon and come on in. I don't think there were 28 days between trials. There might have been. Wait, maybe there is, Liam. We should count. The mic is off, but it looks like sidebar is done. I guess we're coming back at 9 in the morning. I don't know. What is she looking at here? Do we have motions? I don't know. Nope, she's getting ready to go. They're just not turning the mic back on for us. I think we're done. I don't know why they keep putting it up like that and then back. If she comes back up, I'll put it up, but I'm going to hang for a minute just in case. They've done this to me before. They tease me with the camera views and no audio. And then I get ready to sign off, and then I hear them in the background, and I got to pull it up real quick again. But I'll be back tomorrow morning. As far as I know, we have a full court day tomorrow. We're obviously going to start with Cross. And the feed just died. So they're done. Well, that's the question, Teresa. Good question. When is the Daybell trial happening? It was supposed to start with opening statements this afternoon once they finish seating the jury, but that has been delayed again because Lori is ill. And she showed up in a wheelchair today. She wouldn't even walk. She wouldn't get out of the wheelchair to sit in a regular chair so that they could come in and talk to the jury. She would not cooperate with the judge at all in regards to just trying to muddle through for the afternoon. And she's even complaining about coming in on Wednesday, and that's a day. Am I covering it again? Yeah, I'm speaking on it. I'll be speaking on whatever happened today, tomorrow, on True Crime and Legal Updates. And it will I will have a video recording of the opening statements because that's going to happen during the Reed trial unless it gets delayed to June. Remember, this trial was only going to be like a week or so. And then Judge Berinsky has to do this training thing. It does look, if she refuses to come Wednesday, they're going to have to release those jury members. And then if they don't sit that jury, they could delay the trial after that and just tell them when to come. But I don't know. I think if we have time, if they do move it to after Judge Berinsky gets back from his, I think it was some kind of training seminar, then I probably will be able to cover it every day. But there'll definitely be videos and there'll be evening discussions on it. I just don't know if there'll be live court as it's going on. Remember, they are a few hours behind us, so they would not be morning anyway. They'd be afternoon. So it's really enticing for me because it's easier when they start, at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon instead of like 9 a.m. So if possible, I'll be able to do a few of them. I guess the short answer is I would like to, Teresa, if possible, because is it like interesting to watch her try to do pro se. It really is. It's actually mind-boggling that she thinks she's doing a good job. you know. The facts of the evidence will show that LVD. Yes, I think so, Liam. You don't have to go too far into the case to see that, you know. But on that, everybody, I guess that's it for tonight. Okay, so nothing going on the channel tonight. Well, I will see you tomorrow morning. For those of you that want to watch more of the live trial of Karen Reed and continuing cross-examination of Dr. Marie Russell by Hank Brennan. We did not go over our sidebar goal. However, for Maye owes me 10,000 OWO because the final tally was 11 sidebars, but the prosecution had 30 objections compared to 11 objections by the defense. But like I said, it was a little rough because we didn't get a lot of cross in the afternoon, so the defense really didn't get a lot of time to actually cross-examine the witness, and so defense didn't really get to object too much. So I'm going to throw it out there, Maye. I'm not going to count the objections until after this witness is finished, and then we'll cut it off at the end of when Dr. Marie Russell gets released from testimony tomorrow sometime, hopefully, depending on the redirect by Alessi, and that makes it more fair. So at this point, the bet is still on. If you're willing, I hope to hear from you later. All right, everybody. I think that's more fair. I think we're going to wrap it up then, and I will see some of you tomorrow. Hopefully you can join me for more live Karen Reed and me trying to stay awake during Bob Alessi's direct. Well, it wasn't as bad as usual. I shouldn't pick on him so much today. It wasn't as bad as it was. I don't know. That's my opinion anyway. Have a good night, everybody. And I'll see you again tomorrow morning.